You're listening to Switched On Australia, the podcast that tracks the opportunities and challenges of electrifying everything, everywhere. Switched On is brought to you by the publishers of Renew Economy, Australia's best informed, most read website focusing on the green energy transition, and is supported by Boundless Earth. Boundless Earth uses philanthropy, investment and direct advocacy to help Australia become a global force in a decarbonised world. G'day and welcome to Switched On Australia. I'm Anne Delaney. Thanks for joining me. Australia is in the middle of a home battery boom. Tens of thousands of households are installing batteries under the Cheaper Home Batteries scheme, hoping to cut power bills, soak up more solar and help clean up the grid. But my guest today says there's a serious problem hiding inside many of those shiny new batteries. Simon Hackett is a long-time tech entrepreneur who sits right at the intersection of telecommunications and clean energy. He's the founder of Internode, one of Australia's most successful broadband companies, and he's an early investor in clean energy. Recently, he's been working on a new startup building software to intelligently manage energy flows in homes and buildings. And what Simon's discovered is that many of the batteries being subsidised today are effectively locked. They're tied to the manufacturer's own software, often cloud-based, and closed off to other services. And that can leave consumers with little real choice over how their battery is used, who controls it, or how it earns them money over time. Simon wants the government to only subsidise home batteries that have systems that are open and interoperable. He'll explain what that is. But basically, any software that can work with any battery and households can stay in control of the assets they've paid for. Simon Hackett, thanks so much for joining the Switched On podcast today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Anne.
Simon, you're a long-time tech entrepreneur and you've recently founded a new company, Energy Autopilot, that's been developing what they call new home energy management systems, which are basically trying to help homeowners optimise their energy use. Tell me, what's the problem that you've stumbled across?
Right, Anne. So the problem in getting our new software exercise, Energy Autopilot, to control batteries, because that's one of the big things you need to control in a home is batteries, is that not all of the vendors of batteries that people decide to use and deploy in their house actually allow new pieces of software like ours to control them at all. We've discovered a couple of really interesting problems about that. One is that there's a tendency to only allow the control of your home battery through the cloud, and there's some downsides to that. And there's products on the market, including some very big ones, Tesla being an easy example, that while they make it possible in principle to control a battery from innovative new software like ours, in practice, they politely refuse to let us do that. They actually don't want us to do it. And the curious reason for that is that they would prefer that if you bought their battery, you used entirely their software, and we have a different point of view.
And tell me what your point of view is. You're trying to open it up, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. So what we're seeing in energy is the same thing we've seen in things like mobile phones. There's two ways that manufacturers tend to think. They either want to vertically integrate your world, like Apple, where if you buy an Apple thing, Apple want you to take everything from them. And you've got, in a sense, the Android world, where you build your solution as a combination of parts from lots of different vendors that make that thing work. And ironically, since I'm actually a huge fan of Apple in terms of the devices I use in my life, in this case, what we want to do is go the other way. We want horizontal integration. And what I mean by that is we want to see a world where whatever brand of battery you've decided to install in your home and whatever energy retailer you've chosen, you can also have your choice of smart software to tie those things together, rather than being locked into the decisions made by the manufacturer of your battery in particular.
And what you're talking about here, Simon, my understanding is the whole concept of interoperability, which is a bit of jargon that gets thrown around. And essentially what we need are batteries that can work with lots of different software, services, energy programs, not just that one that the manufacturer wants to direct you to. Well,
Yeah, exactly.
tell me what that would mean in practice if it's a more open system.
Right. What it means in practice is that as an owner of a battery in a home or a business, you've got freedom of choice both initially and also over time, right? You can change your mind over time about how you best leverage that battery in the rest of your energy system in your home or office. So rather than being tied into one answer, if you find a better answer, and we hope that obviously in the future some people will decide that our answer is a better answer, you can choose to use that. It's a freedom of choice thing. You get this curious situation at the moment where you pick a brand of battery probably because your installer has just recommended that because it makes sense for that particular one to go in. After you've bought it is when you find out whether or not you actually have a choice of what software can control it, whether you're stuck in the world your manufacturer imagines is the future, or whether you can go into whatever future you like. Interoperability is a really key concept. It's the reason the internet works as well, right? The idea that it doesn't matter what brand of thing you've chosen, any software can control any bit of hardware. And it sounds kind of obvious and boring, but strangely, it doesn't happen nearly as much as it should. And it needs to.
Yes, and if anyone remembers, those days when, we had Apple systems and we had PC systems and trying to get them to talk in those early days, it was a damn nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. And as we all know, there's an enormous number of batteries being installed in Australia at the moment for great reasons. And that produces this fabulous opportunity to make the energy system that we all use work better. But to do that, you've got to remove the friction in the system as well. You've got to remove any barrier to any piece of innovation in that world connecting to another piece of innovation in that world. Right? The last thing we need are strange little silos where you can only do one thing rather than doing something far more flexible.
In terms of the manufacturer's interests in maintaining this sort of limited capacity, I presume it's a business model that they're operating here, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Again, like we'll use Apple as the obvious example in a different sector, right? Yeah, that they would like it to be the case that if you buy their brand of battery, you're also going to buy their recommended brand of solar solution, and perhaps their other bits and pieces. Maybe their electric car. They would like you to sit in their ecosystem because that maximizes their income. It's not an unreasonable notion, but it flies in the face of the notion that interoperability should exist, that we should have a choice if we want to do something different at any level in that process. We should be able to pick another brand. And in the case of controlling your home battery in order to make it more energy efficient, lower your power bill, make the grid a bit greener, you as a consumer need to have a choice of solutions to do that. And you need to be able to change your mind over time as better things turn up. And at the moment, those two things fly against each other. It's very common in that environment to wind up with government ultimately needing to step in and help to drive the notion of interoperability, of possibly through standards, but mostly through the idea of opening up a market so that you don't get a kind of balkanized situation where everyone's stuck in their own little world and they can't play together.
Let's talk about some of the solutions a little bit later, but just tell me, what implications does this have, not being able to control or choose and have options on who you deal with? What implications does that have for things like virtual power plants,
Right.
which, obviously the government has with the Cheaper Home Batteries program, they've made or insisted that all the batteries that get put in under this program are VPP ready because they want to be able to aggregate the power that can go back into the grid. Tell me, what implications though would that have for, if we don't have this
Right.
these choices?
This is it's a great question, and there's a couple of aspects to the answer, and it's actually a very deep, important thing in my view. The government have done the right thing by saying, gee, if we are going to contribute money to a battery that you wind up with in your house, it should be capable of being a part of the solution on the grid in general, not just helping you. And that's the idea of a virtual power plant. Let's start with just explaining what a virtual power plant is. And in my view, it's kind of the old way to solve a problem, and I'll come to what the new way is. So the old way to solve the idea is, if we've got thousands or hundreds of thousands of batteries, the principle of a VPP is that you sign up to one and you are connecting your battery into an internet-controlled robot army, right? That all of those batteries, yours and tens of thousands of others, let's say, all pull and push energy to the grid together, pretend to be one big battery, and act as a grid storage device. So you've got the big grid batteries that are on the grid in their own right. You're turning all our consumer batteries into another one that's virtual in the sense that we're all working together. Sounds great, but here's the problem. When you sign up to a VPP, you are handing control of the device you paid for, and the government paid for in this case, to a third party. They control your battery. They decide when energy is bought and sold. They decide what the profit share is, if any, between you and them. So you've actually given up your agency. You've given up your control of an asset you paid for to someone else. So it's no wonder at the moment that the take-up of VPPs, as opposed to the theoretical capacity to join them, is down in the weeds, maybe 4%.
Yes.
And it should be, because it's actually not a very exciting idea, right? I bought this thing and now I'm going to hand it to someone else to make money from. You are making the grid greener, but you're actually feathering someone else's nest with your money, which is a very strange situation. So no wonder it doesn't appeal. So there's that.
I mean, there's this lack of trust just generally
Yeah, exactly. And this doesn't
of
help.
retailers, etc. And what you've identified, though, is that not only do consumers actually distrust a lot of the retailers and the people who are actually offering the VPPs, but what you've identified is that if they're pushed into actually only having one choice with a VPP because of this thing with the batteries, that is going to turn people off even more.
Right, and this is the deep subtlety. The rules in the cheaper home battery scheme require that your vendor attests that it is VPP ready. Here's the thing they've got wrong. It doesn't require you can connect to any VPP. It only requires that you can connect to one.
Right.
A VPP, right? So if you buy a Tesla battery, you can connect to a Tesla VPP, not necessarily be able to connect to any other VPP that's in the market at all. So notwithstanding the problems in my mind with VPPs in general, you haven't even got freedom of choice about which one to join. So that's a hassle. Hence the drive the high horse I've been on of late, saying that these batteries should be interoperable. In other words, any software should be able to run any battery, so that consumers have freedom of choice about two things. About they can have their choice of VPP, and maybe that'll help people take more of them up.
Yes.
But there's another side to this, which is VPPs in a lot of ways in my mind are the past, and there's a version of the future here. So maybe let me explain what I mean. I think a virtual power plant, as I said, isn't the way to go forward. I think we all need to have real power plants. And this is really quite deep. VPPs are a child of a world in which you and me in our homes did not have access to the real cost of energy on the grid, which is that price moves around incredibly dynamically, especially in states like my home state of South Australia. Shifts every few minutes, and the price goes positive and negative for buying and selling. And in the past, the only way a generator or a big battery could access it was they had to be big enough to join the wholesale market. So a homeowner couldn't join the wholesale market, could only get retail plans that were very boring and very fixed. It's the rise of companies that are often called agile retailers. Amber Electric's the obvious example that's really changed this. Amber's premise, which is brilliant in my view, is, hey, pay me some money every month to run my business and I will give you access to the wholesale price as a retail customer. So you as a consumer are exposed to that wholesale price that moves around rapidly over time. Now, the thing is, to utilize that, you actually need three things. You need access to that wholesale price that moves around. So you've got the opportunity to buy low and literally buy low and sell high. You need a battery. Well, that's the bit that's happening like gangbusters. And you need some smart software to tie the two together. It's kind of like a trinity. You need those three things. If you've got a battery, access to the wholesale real tariff that you used to have to be huge to access, and some software intelligence from something like Energy Autopilot, then you, instead of being a virtual power plant, you're a real one, Anne. You've become a real small power plant. You are just as validly connected to the grid and just as validly contributing energy to and from the grid as snowy hydro is. And now, if you get tens of thousands or millions of people responding to that dynamic price in an economically rational way, buying when it's cheap, selling back when the price is good to sell back, then you get a real power plant happening. You get loose synchronization around that price. And we all get to be very happy, as long as you've got a choice of airlines when it comes to how your software runs your battery, as long as you're not stuck with a vendor that says you can only have one VPP and it's ours. And if you want to run the battery yourself, even though you paid for it, I'm sorry, no suit for you.
Yes.
So this very boring idea that all batteries should be controllable from anyone's software is actually incredibly important.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, Amber is offering this access to the wholesale market. Is it correct that not all batteries will enable you to connect
Right.
to Amber?
Right. This is exactly the point. So Amber offer a service called Smart Shift that comes along with their offering. So when you sign up at retail, you can use their software called Smart Shift, which is their version of Energy Autopilot, right? It's software that does the stuff we've been describing. The
Right.
problem is there's a zillion brands of batteries out there that people are now installing. I saw a number like 50 or 60 of them. And Amber have only managed to figure out how to control a small subset of those brands. So if you happen to have a different brand of battery electronics that Amber don't support, you need to find some other way to make this work. You wind up signing up to Amber and then you can't control your battery, then you've actually made a decision that might be very bad because you wind up buying power at the wrong
Yes.
time. So Amber have got the same challenge we do, which is that they would like to control all brands of battery, but they simply can't because the vendors aren't all required to play nicely. And so one of the things we're doing, Anne, and so we're operating not in conflict with them, but we're very much in cooperation with them. The reason
Yeah.
Energy Autopilot exists is that I use a brand of electronics with my batteries that Amber don't support.
Yeah.
And so it's that classic thing, right? I'm a geek. I like controlling things with computers, and I've got these. The brand I happen to have is Victron, right? There's a company called Victron Energy that have been around for 50 years, as long as Apple, and they come from the off-grid world, and they've learned to do on-grid, very kind of industrial devices. I've got big energy systems I've built at home and at the office and in our farm in Tasmania running on that stuff. And I signed up to Amber and then discovered I couldn't do anything with my battery. So I did the classic geeky thing. I rolled up my sleeves and wrote some software to control the Victron stuff and to talk to Amber and make my own real power plant. And having done
Have you been successful?
yeah, absolutely. It works like gangbusters, right? Works really
Right.
nicely. So at the moment, our software runs beautifully with Victron gear, and we're busy expanding the brands that we support. And deliberately, we're heading into brands of batteries that Amber don't support with Smart Shift. Because if we zig where Amber zag, everyone's actually happy. Amber don't mind because they just want more customers.
Yeah.
We don't mind because we get more customers. And that whole interoperability, that market, the very internet-style market of lots of things talking to lots of other things, that works if everything is interoperable. Do you see where we
Yes.
come back to that again?
Okay, we'll take a short break and we'll be back in a sec.
G'day, Alex Carey here, proud ambassador for GoodWe. The GoodWe ESA 3060 all-in-one commercial solution is available now from GoodWe wholesalers. With a massive 50 kilowatt hours of the battery eligible for the federal rebate, it's the perfect solution for small businesses. The commercial energy storage range from GoodWe is growing, with more models launching soon. Visit goodwe.com.au for more information or contact the local GoodWe team.
So, Simon, so many people must be getting caught out at the moment. One, because their installer doesn't explain the problem with, this exclusivity that the manufacturer has set up. But secondly, I do know a number of people who, reasonably well-informed people who are signing up to Amber, and they learn that they can't actually
Yeah.
access. What?
Well, and here's the thing: Amber, to their credit, have got better at this. If you sign up with them and you tell them you've got a brand of battery system they don't support, they will tell you so.
Mm.
And at the moment, their advice is effectively, we can't yet help you. Don't sign up with us because you'll be sad, not happy. We want to make everyone happy by actually solving that problem for Amber and for ourselves. But yeah, absolutely. The challenge is you can wind up in good faith buying a battery system that suits you and suits the people that installed it for you, and then you discover after you've bought it whether or not you made a good decision. And it's not fair for a consumer to know this in advance. This is exactly why there needs to be a policy mandate in the cheaper home battery scheme, not to say it must be VPP compatible, but to say it must be interoperable, that to get government money, you must make what the geeky thing is called an API. You must make the application programming interface available to let any piece of software that the owner wants to be able to pull the levers.
Yes.
It's actually that simple, including a VPP, but not limited to a VPP.
How complicated is this software that certainly you've written, for instance? You initially wrote it for your own batteries, but in terms of getting it out there to more people, how easy is it?
Well, it's a pretty complex and a pretty complex exercise, but I have got a long career in computer control of real-world systems, and I used to run a company with 500 staff that wrote a lot of software. I've got no problem getting software written, and I like this stuff. So I'm having fun actually expanding into this realm and expanding the hardware that this controls and making it all go. And the philosophy I've got with our stuff is to make stuff, and this speaks to the heritage of the company I started and used to run Internode. The stuff we're doing is very geek friendly. It's designed to let people change the strategy that the software uses to control their battery if they don't like the one we've come up with. We give you control of the levers. One of the downsides of a lot of this stuff, like SmartShift, is SmartShift takes its best shot at doing the right thing for you, but it doesn't always explain why, and it doesn't always do what you expect.
In what way? In what way?
Okay, because often because it's actually smarter than you know it is. If the price is good to sell right now, sometimes it doesn't sell your battery energy when you think it should. If the price is good to buy right now, sometimes it doesn't buy. And you think, well, it must be wrong. And the answer is it's not wrong. It's just looked at the future. It's looked at what's going to happen later in the day and said, actually, there'll be a better time to sell later, or there'll be a better time to buy later. But it doesn't explain that. So we have a lot of emphasis on explainability in our software and telling you why we've made a decision to buy or sell right now, or why we haven't, if that makes sense.
That's in very plain English, Simon?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
This is one of the issues. Some people just want to hand it over because it's too complicated.
Right. So let's go back. In a VPP, someone else is pulling the levers and you don't know why. If you're running SmartShift is pulling the levers and it's pulling them rationally, but it doesn't tell you why. We want to pull the levers for you and tell you why. And if you don't like the way we pull the levers, we actually give you access to the control scripts and let you change the strategy to do something else instead. So we want to actually give you the capacity to control your own device. We'll automate it for you. And our special sauce is, if you don't like the way we've done it, we will give you so much agency that you can change that strategy yourself.
But could somebody like me change it though? I mean, are you giving me parameters, or you asking me to go and rewrite software because I can't do the latter?
No, and we're not expecting most people to do that, but we're expecting that most people actually have a geek in their family that might be prepared to do it for you, right? So the idea is to make it so easy to use that you don't have to do that. But we also, our heritage from my days in Internode is that somewhere in your family group is your designated geek that will look at that and say, I can do a better job of that for you, and I just feel motivated to do that. We're going to give them the ability to do that as a special feature, not as a requirement. So no, you don't have to do it, and it'll do the right thing generally for you anyway, and it'll tell you why. But yeah, we're also going to give you the capacity to change that.
And can I just clarify, this software is actually attached to your own device, to the battery. It's not a cloud thing.
Right, that's a great question. Yeah, one of the things we're doing differently to Amber and SmartShift, right? SmartShift is entirely a cloud-based piece of software. So it runs in a cloud, and so it can only control a battery if your battery happens to also do the cloud stuff. And the downside of all of that is, if the internet's a bit wobbly, then so is your control of your own home energy. We've got a different way. When you sign up to our service, you get a little box that you plug into your home network. You just plug it in the back of your router, and that's our little agent. We call it a servo that sits on your network and reaches across your local network to talk to your battery, to talk to high energy using devices like EV chargers and heat pumps and pool pumps, and your solar array, etc. And then it communicates back to the brains of our operation back up in the cloud again. But there's a little bit of our software running inside your network and a little bit of our software running in the cloud. And the advantage of of us sending you a little box to plug in is that box works very rapidly. It's right there in the local network alongside your battery. If the internet goes away, then it keeps working. It's also a lot more cost effective this way. One of the curiosities about using the cloud is that more and more it's the case that some of the battery providers are starting to charge money to control the battery over the cloud, whereas if
As
you're
an
just
additional
running
subscription service or something.
yes, correct, to pay for their own cloud, right? Our view is that if we put our device on your network, that local access, so control over what's called the LAN, the local area network, should be free and should be documented so it can be done. And it doesn't have to cost money because it's not costing the manufacturer any money, right? Whereas their cloud is. They have to pay for resources on it.
Yeah.
So philosophically, we put a little device on your network to make our result much more responsive and to make it cheaper. And so that's the thing that we would love the government to do in the cheaper home battery scheme, is to mandate that every battery electronic device that gets subsidized has a free of charge, documented way to control that device over your home network from another box on your home network. And it doesn't have to be us. It can be, you can go run some free software like Home Assistant that knows how to connect to things across the network.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it should be free and it should be documented. Now, some people think as well it should use there should be one magnificent technical standard by which you control the battery. That's not nearly as important as it used to be, because you can get AI to write bits of software as long as it has an API to do it with, a programming interface to do it with. It just, what matters is that the manufacturers are encouraged to make it possible for software to control your battery, and that they will document how to do that so you don't have to guess. That's it.
Yeah.
Right? Don't get in the way. Tell me how to do it. Don't get in the way, so that I, on behalf of you as a customer, can make your battery do whatever you want it to do. You paid for it. You should be able to pull the levers. The idea that you can buy this thing and then discover after the fact that you bought a locked up box that can only work according to the rules the manufacturer chose is nutty. And there's actually there's an amazing risk here, Anne, as well. And this is a real risk. The term for this, it's due to a lovely author called Cory Doctorow, is enshittification.
Yes, I've heard of this.
Right. So this is the idea that you buy something like a home battery, and if it can only be controlled by its manufacturer's cloud, have a think about what happens when the manufacturer goes out of business.
Yes.
The cloud goes away, and you now own a boat anchor. This is real. This is a non-theoretical risk. There was an interesting case of it a year or so ago in the US where one brand of home electric vehicle chargers.
Oh, the NLX, is it?
Yes,
Yeah,
that one, right? Right, were entirely cloud controlled. And one day NLX got up in the morning and said they didn't feel like doing the American residential market anymore. Their focus is industrial things, right? They didn't go out of business. They just decided they couldn't give a damn about doing that anymore, and they turned it off.
So how many people were affected by that?
Oh, hundreds of thousands, to my knowledge.
And did they have any recourse?
Not really. Isn't that amazing? So this is the point. The idea of interoperability over the local network for every device you bought, and it shouldn't just be batteries, right? It includes all those funny little gadgets that run your lights and everything else. All of you are cloud dependent, right? They need a local area network-based way to control them, a way to control it over your local network that is documented and free. And that means that if the manufacturer goes off the boil, the whole community of open source geeks out there can pick your device up and keep it going for you.
Yeah.
And it's a remarkable concept. You wouldn't buy a car. You wouldn't want to buy a car and then discover next year your car manufacturer's gone off the idea and it won't start anymore.
Yeah.
That's exactly the risk. So it's really quite important.
And given, you've been describing some of these problems with the cloud-based systems.
Right, and risks. Yeah.
And risks of the cloud-based system, it seems to me, am I correct in saying that most of these batteries that are actually going in are cloud-based systems?
Right, that's a great question. And the answer here is they can be both.
Right.
In other words, there's nothing bad about a cloud-based control mechanism because it gives you convenient access to look at your battery from anywhere in the world. This is not an either or, this is an and, right? What you need is these devices need a way to control them that's documented, that's on the local network, that exists in parallel to however their cloud works. And one of the reasons for this is that otherwise you get this. It's an antidote to this amazing proliferation of every gadget we've got is a different app, right? And it drives us all mad. At the moment, we have the reverse happening. One of the things that geeks are very resourceful people, and I'll give you an example. A year or two back, some geeks figured out that if you bought a Tesla Powerwall, while there was a Tesla cloud-based control for it, you could also control it over the local network, right? That someone figured it out, and they published, out on GitHub how to control a Tesla battery with your own software on your own network. Exactly what we're talking about. Tesla's response to that was to remove that local access path.
Right. Great.
They took it away. And I had a conversation with them about this, Anne, and it was a really interesting conversation because we started out talking about the notion of why would a vendor do that, right? And the answer is because they make more money if they lock you into their ecosystem. But they don't make a lot less money if they don't. But they needed a bit of an incentive. And the conversation I had with some guys in Tesla was astonishing to me. It went like this. I said, well, why can't you make this open and interoperable? And they said, well, we don't feel like it commercially. But here's the cute thing. In any regulatory environment in the world where we are legally required to provide open, local, interoperable access, we just will.
Oh.
Right. But they need to be told.
They've got to be pushed.
Yeah, right. But the push is not a push that costs anyone any money.
Yeah.
And the Europeans are good at this. And the Europeans seem to be heading in this direction, Anne, right?
Well, that's what I was wondering. Has any jurisdiction taken action on this?
Yeah, the Europeans are heading this way, and they've done it before. An example of this is actually the right to repair movement. Right? That whole journey.
It's all part of the same, isn't it? Really?
Right. And even in Australia. Yeah, in fact, the great example in Australia is, in fact, that these days, if you buy a car, you can have your logbook service done by any repair shop you like, and that needs two things. It needs the manufacturer not to fight against it, and it needs the manufacturer to provide the service manuals. Right?
Yes.
That journey took 10 years of hard graft amongst regulators and consumer advocacy groups to make it happen in Australia. We unfortunately need to undertake the same journey again with the operation of consumer devices that move energy around, with the operation of batteries.
We don't have 10 years.
No, we don't, right? But we need the same thing, right? You need the manual and you need the manufacturer not to fight you. And here's the opportunity, and this is what I think is exciting. The fastest way to get manufacturers to move is not to regulate, it's to pull on their wallet. If the cheaper home battery scheme was modified to say, we won't keep sending money, we won't keep subsidizing your brand of battery unless you provide interoperable documented access to control it over the network, then that would happen instantly. Would cost the government nothing, would cost the manufacturers nothing, because in all cases, Anne, that control interface exists, and if they've turned it off, they just need to turn it on again.
Yes.
That's actually it.
Yes.
And so the cheaper home battery scheme is the most amazing opportunity to cut that 10 years out. It could be next week.
So Simon, just a final question. How urgent does this have to be done? Because we are putting these batteries in at such a phenomenal rate.
Right. Here's the good news, and I want to say it's terribly urgent. The government must act tomorrow. But the truth is, the beauty of this is that all of these batteries can be updated over the internet. It's a firmware update, right? So we can solve this problem for all batteries that are in and all batteries that are going in with a software update.
Oh, right.
So when we get the government to politely strong-arm manufacturers to play nicely for the consumers who are buying their batteries, a software update would cause all the existing ones to become just as interoperable. That's fantastic. This is actually a case of the internet being exactly our friend, right?
Yes.
So the reason it's urgent is to start leveraging that storage as soon as possible. But the beauty is, if it takes a year or two, it will still open up the entire population of batteries when it happens.
Well, let's see what happens in that case. But I mean, that's a positive note to end on.
It is.
Simon Hackett, thanks so much for joining the Switched On podcast today.
Been a pleasure to talk to you, man.
And Simon Hackett is a tech entrepreneur and the founding CEO of Energy Autopilot, an open, consumer-controlled energy software. You've been listening to Switched On Australia. I'm Anne Delaney. Thanks for listening. Hope you can join me next time.